بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أنزل الله تعالى في أوائل الوحي يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر. وذكر في سورة البقرة إن الله يحب التوابين ويحب المتطهرين. وقال عن الرجال الذين يحبون الطهارة فيه رجال يحبون أن يطهروا. وذكر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الطهور شطر الإيمان. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the importance of tahara in multiple different ayat in the Quran. And in the very beginnings of the revelation, he said, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. And Imam al-Ghazali mentions about the hadith that I read to you where the Prophet ﷺ says, الطهور شطر الإيمان, that the tahara is half of faith. And he mentions that it is not logical that the tahara here mentions just the wudu and the ghusl to be half of iman, but that the tahara of the body, the tahara of the batin, which is the heart, the tahara of the character, the tahara of the deeds that we do, all of those things then become half of faith. Before we go into the depths of the fiqh of tahara, what is necessary to understand that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has decided that we should have physical tahara for our ibadah. So he says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had desired, He would have given us another system. And if we think about it, that a lot of the time our faces are clean. And when we washed it for Dhuhr prayer, it's clean by the time Asr comes. But if your wudu is lost, you still have to do wudu again and wash your face again. So it is the Sharia, the one who has decided the Sharia, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has decided that we should have tahara as part of our rituals and our worship. And the ayah that I read to you yesterday, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, that we are made an ummah that is in the middle path. So if we look at the ummahs before us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Okay? Who are the غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ? They are the Yahud. And the Dhalin are Nasara. Jazakumullah khair. When we look at how the Yahud practiced their deen, they had the Torah and they had the Talmud. And the Talmud is a book that is in many different volumes. It will take half a cupboard, shelf that will cover the Talmud. And all they would do, their ulama all day long, they would take a text from the Talmud and one of them would argue with it and the other one would argue against it. And they would spend the whole day just arguing on each different line in the Talmud, so that they lost all of the essence of worship and they only fought over the differences that were in the text. And the Nasara went to the other extreme and said that you need to have Iman and no ibadah. It doesn't matter what your ibadat are, it doesn't matter whether you are doing halal or haram. The only thing that matters is for you to go to Jannah, all you need is Iman. And Iman in what? Na'udhu billahi min dhalik, in shirk. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us an ummatan wasata. We can neither be so extreme in matters of worship, and we can neither be so relaxed that we don't take any care at all. So in Tahara there are three kinds of people. Okay? One kind of person who doesn't take any care of his tahara. He doesn't mind what he's doing. He doesn't look after whether his wudu is complete. He doesn't take care of what is on his clothing. He is completely relaxed. And he says that Allah is Kareem. That's his statement. And the problem is that Allah is the one that said, do this and do this and do this. So taking care is necessary. And on the other extreme is a person who has waswas all the time. So that he is continuously going to the toilet to check. And you find him that when he does wudu, he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and he washes his hands. And he says, oh no, I didn't do that the right time. So he washes his hands again, Bismillah ar-Rahman, he washes them again. He said, no, I didn't get the timing right, let me start again. And then you find that he is taking 30 minutes to do wudu because every single thing is being washed 17 times because it wasn't correct. And I personally prayed, besides one person, we were praying Dhuhr, and he said, Allahu Akbar. And I have already started my prayer. It was just, we were in university, I was late, he was late, we missed the Jama'ah, we were praying together. So I said, Allahu Akbar. He said, Allahu Akbar. And then I started reading Fatiha, and then he breaks his prayer, and then he starts again, Allahu Akbar. And then 2 seconds later, he breaks his prayer, and again, Allahu Akbar. And I kid you not, he did this 7 or 9 times. I don't remember how many times he broke the prayer. I went to Ruku' and he was still doing Allahu Akbar. He was still trying to fix how he starts his prayer. And the first time he entered the prayer was a perfect entry. There was no problem with it. But the problem was the waswas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want haraj in the deen. He doesn't want undue hardship that you go to those kinds of extreme. Then the third person is the kind of person who takes care of the tahara and he knows the laws, and at the same time he doesn't go to extremes of following the waswas. I wanted to just give a brief introduction to what we will be covering over the next few weeks and what the methodology will be. The time that I have on Thursday nights is short, and what I have learned when I have taught fiqh is that the attention span of people is also short. When you discuss something interesting, a nice story, people can sit for 45 minutes, 1 hour. But when you discuss two things, aqeedah and fiqh, people start to sleep after 10 minutes. So the classes will be very short, inshallah. And today we will just have discussed the importance of tahara, and I want to discuss how the methodology will be.
Sure.
So the methodology of the class will be that when you read the books, for example, if you read The Reliance of the Traveler, which is a Shafi'i book, you find that he starts with the types of water. Okay? What types of water give tahara? Then he goes to the fara'id of the wudu and the sunan of the wudu, and then after that he discusses what breaks the wudu and other things like that. If you go to, for example, Quduri, which is a book, a Hanafi text, it's still used as a textbook in the universities that teach Hanafi fiqh, is that he starts with the wudu itself, okay? And he starts, in fact, with the ayah of Ma'idah that I already told you, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, idha qumtum ila salati. The methodology that I used is a chronological order. Rather than following either of these two, we will start with chronological order. It is assumed that your wudu is lost, that is why you are doing wudu. So the first thing to talk about is what things cause the loss of wudu. Okay? The second thing we will talk about is how to gain tahara of the body. Okay? The third thing is the tahara of the clothes. Then we will go into the wudu and we will discuss the fara'id and the sunan and the recommended acts. And within wudu, we will cover the masah over the khuffain, and then we will go to tayammum, inshallah. This will take a number of weeks. I did it in a khutbah. I give a khutbah in Liverpool Hospital, and I thought I would do it in one khutbah, and I was giving a summary of all of these things, and it still took me 3 khutbahs to do when I was summarizing it. So with you guys, we will do it in depth. And the other thing that we will do is that living in the West, as you know, there are people of different backgrounds, of different knowledges and different madhahib that they follow. So my philosophy is that to mention what is the madhahib of the 4 imams. Reason being that you, for example, might be Shafi'i. And if I tell you all the Hanafi fiqh, you'll be saying, well, I don't know what applies to me and what doesn't apply to me. And similarly, someone else might be Hanafi, and if I go through the whole Shafi'i fiqh, he will be saying, well, maybe that doesn't apply to me, right? So inshallah, we will be covering all day 4 madhahib. My own background is that I have primarily studied Hanafi fiqh, and whenever you study Hanafi fiqh, they always compare it to Shafi'i fiqh and Maliki fiqh, because in generally that's where the differences are. Hanbali fiqh generally takes one of the 3 positions. Generally, he doesn't have a new 4th finding because he came last. Right? Imam Abu Hanifa came first, then Imam Malik, then Imam Shafi'i, and the last one to come was Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. The last thing to say is when we are discussing the madhahib, so people start to get confused about why there are differences. So for example, Imam Shafi'i says that when you touch your wife's hand, your wudu is lost. Imam Malik says that touching, if it was with shahwa, the wudu is lost. And Imam Abu Hanifa says that the touching of the wife does not break the wudu, whether it was with shahwa or without shahwa, right? So now the listener says, well, I don't understand why there is such a difference. And I'm going to finish with explaining this one hadith. It will just take 2 or 3 minutes, and then we will finish the class with that. In the battle of Khandaq, the tribes of the Yahud betrayed the Muslims. So after the battle was finished, the Prophet ﷺ decided that he would go to the houses of the Yahud and finish them. So he instructed the Sahaba, and the wording is, do not pray Asr until you reach their houses. You imagine Medina is like suburbs, okay? We're living in Auburn, for example, and they are in Lidcombe. So he says, don't pray Asr until you get to Lidcombe, till you get to where their houses are. So when the Sahaba started going there, the time of Asr was about to end. So some of the Sahaba said that the Prophet ﷺ said, don't pray Asr, which means don't pray it at all, okay, until you get there. When you get there, even if Asr prayer is gone, you pray it late. So they took the literal interpretation. That's what half the Sahaba did. Okay? The other half said that, no, the Prophet meant hurry up. He didn't mean leave Asr and delay it. He meant hurry up. So they prayed Asr in their time, and then they got to the Yahud. Now the Sahaba had a conflict. One is saying one thing, and the other is saying something else. They are both complete opposites of each other. There's an ikhtilaf between the Sahaba. They got there, and what happened with the Yahud. Then they came to the Prophet ﷺ and said that half of us delayed their Asr until they prayed it after the time of Maghrib, and half of us prayed Asr in its time. And the Prophet ﷺ said that you are both correct. Okay? So when you are studying the ikhtilaf, and you hear from me very opposite ikhtilafat between the fuqaha, you need to understand that all of them read the same thing. So all of the Sahaba were there and present. They heard the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ with their own ears. There's no hadith chain that they might say there's an issue. They were hearing it directly from their ears, and even then they interpreted it in 2 opposite ways. So it is no surprise that Imam Abu Hanifa will say something and Imam Shafi'i will say something completely opposite when they study the exact same text. So listen to these words with an open heart and an open mind, and because from next week we will go right into the things that cause the breakage of the wudu, it is necessary that you take notes. So inshallah, Thursday nights, remember to bring a notebook and a pen or a pencil, and after the class we can answer any questions about the topic of that day.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan.